My mother announced in church that I was no longer her child. 6 years later, she had to stand in line outside my office. My name is Hannah Carter. Or at least, it was that Sunday. My son Liam was 7, small enough that his hand disappeared inside mine, old enough to read faces and hear what adults tried to bury under polite smiles. We weren't being excluded from a party. We were being excluded from our family publicly during my parents' 40th wedding anniversary service in the same brick church where I grew up. The sanctuary was packed. White lilies lined the aisle. The organ hummed. People hugged with that blessed to see you warmth that never reached their eyes. My mother, Judith Carter, moved through it all like she owned the air, accepting praise as if she'd invented devotion. I stood near the back with Liam because we were late. Not really, just not placed. Weeks earlier, I'd asked where we should sit. Judith's voice had been calm, almost sweet. "You can come," she said, "but don't make everything awkward." Awkward meant, don't let anyone remember I had a child outside of marriage. Don't let the church ladies connect my son's curls to the missing ring on my finger. Be invisible, but grateful. So I wore a navy dress with sleeves. Liam wore a button-down and the tie he hated. We slid into an end seat on the last row. Up front, my siblings sat arranged like a family portrait. Emily, my older sister, was a lawyer, with a smile that said she was always winning. Noah, my younger brother, was an engineer with a laugh that made people trust him. They looked toward the pulpit, not toward me. The pastor spoke about legacy. People nodded. People whispered, "Amen." My father, Richard, stood first and thanked God, the congregation, and his brilliant wife. He didn't mention me. He didn't have to. When it was Judith's turn, she rose in a jade dress and pearls. She took the microphone like it belonged in her hand. She talked about love and sacrifice, then started listing children the way you list achievements. "My daughter Emily," she said, and Emily's husband squeezed her waist. "Our son Noah," and Noah grinned. "Children who have brought respect to the Carter name." Judith paused. I knew that pause. I grew up inside that pause. It was the moment before she corrected you, the moment before she made you smaller without raising her voice. "Our family has been blessed with children who bring honor," she continued. Another pause, longer. "Not everyone chooses the right path." Her eyes moved just slightly toward the back, toward me. The church went quiet. Not prayer quiet, audience quiet. Liam looked up at my face. His grip tightened. Judith's voice stayed smooth. "Sometimes choices force us to set boundaries. And today, I want to be clear. I do not recognize every decision that has tried to attach itself to the Carter name." She didn't say Hannah. She didn't say Liam. A few people turned anyway. Others stared forward and listened harder. My son's breath hitched. "Mom," he whispered. I didn't cry. I didn't stand and shout. I didn't beg for my place like it was a chair I'd failed to reserve. I just stared at my mother, as if she were a stranger wearing her face. Judith smiled into the microphone like she'd delivered wisdom, not cruelty. The service rolled on. Applause rose at the end for the Carters, the perfect family, while I stayed seated until the crowd thinned, because I didn't want Liam to walk through aisles of pity. In the parking lot, people avoided my eyes. One woman touched Liam's shoulder and said, "Sweet boy," in a tone that made him flinch. My mother didn't approach us. She didn't need to. She'd already done it where it would echo. My phone buzzed before we even reached the freeway. A text from Emily. "Don't cause a scene today." Noah didn't text at all. That felt like a message. They'd watched our mother draw a line and step to the safe side of it. I stared at the screen until the words turned meaningless, then put the phone face down. Liam didn't know about the texts, but kids feel tension like weather. He kept asking if we were going to Grandma's house afterward, because that's what you do after church. I told him we were going home. He nodded, pretending it was normal, and I realized he was learning something adults admit. Love can be conditional when pride is the religion. On the drive home, Liam sat quiet in the back seat, like something had been taken. Halfway to our apartment, he asked, Mom, do we have a different last name? My hands tightened on the wheel. Why would you ask that, honey? Because Grandma said. He swallowed. She said you don't get to use the Carter name. She said I'm not really Carter. I pulled into a grocery store lot and parked, because I didn't trust my hands to keep driving. I turned around and looked at my son. His eyes were wide, not crying yet, just trying to understand the rules of belonging. No, I said, forcing my voice steady. You didn't do anything wrong. You are not a mistake. But if we're not Carter, he whispered. I felt the old reflex explain, excuse, smooth it over so nobody gets mad. The reflex that had kept me small for years. Then I heard my mother's words again. I do not recognize every decision. If the Carter name was a leash, I could unclasp it. That night, after Liam fell asleep with his stuffed dinosaur tucked under his chin, I sat at our kitchen table. I wrote one word at the top of a blank page. Hale. Hale was my grandmother's maiden name, the only adult in my childhood who ever said, "You don't have to earn love." She was gone now, but the name remained, waiting like a door. I didn't draft a speech. I made a decision so simple it felt like breathing. If my mother could erase me in public, I could rename my life in private. In the morning, I would start the paperwork. I would change Liam's last name. I would change mine. I would stop asking for permission to exist, because I wasn't being removed from a celebration. I was being removed from a story, and I was about to write a new one. People think the hardest moment is the public humiliation. It wasn't. The hardest moment was the way Liam watched me afterward, like he was checking whether I still believed we belonged anywhere. The next week, I took a day off work and drove to the county office with a folder of documents and a stomach full of steel. Liam's school had sent home a family heritage worksheet. The top line said, "Last name." He'd stared at it too long before asking, "Do I write Carter or something else?" That question turned my mother's cruelty into a daily problem. A label on every form, a whisper at every roll call, a reminder that our belonging had conditions. So I stood at a counter under fluorescent lights while a woman with tired eyes and a keyboard asked, "Reason for name change?" I could have said, "Because my mother wanted to punish me." Instead, I said, "Because my child deserves a name that isn't used against him." The clerk paused, then nodded like she understood more than her job description required. The process took months. Fingerprints, fees, court dates, letters mailed to last known addresses. During that time, my mother didn't call once to apologize. My siblings didn't check on me. Emily sent one text. "Mom's embarrassed. Don't make it worse." Noah sent nothing. Silence is a language in families like mine, and they spoke it fluently. On the day of the hearing, Liam sat beside me in a courtroom wearing sneakers that squeaked on the tile. When the judge asked if he understood what it meant to change his name, Liam looked at me first, as if checking whether this was safe. "Yes," he said. "I want to have my mom's name." The judge smiled, gentle. "And what is your mom's name?" I took a breath. "Hale," I said. "Hannah Hale." The gavel tapped once, and in that plain room, my son and I became a new family, on paper one my mother could not edit. Outside, Liam skipped down the courthouse steps. Then he stopped and asked, "Does this mean Grandma can't take it away anymore?" "No one can take it away," I promised. "Not unless we choose to give it. But certainty doesn't pay rent." I was an administrative assistant at a medical office during the day. At night, I cleaned the same building for extra cash. My hands smelled like disinfectant. My back ached. Still, every time I picked Liam up from school and he ran to me, I felt the quiet victory of being the parent who showed up. One evening, as I balanced bills on the kitchen table, I realized I was good at this kind of math, the survival kind. If the car needed tires, groceries got cheaper. If Liam needed a field trip fee, my coat could wait another winter. I tracked every dollar like it was oxygen. A coworker noticed my budget spreadsheet once and joked, "You should charge for that." The comment sat in my head for days. So when Liam fell asleep and the apartment finally went quiet, I opened my old laptop and enrolled in a night certification program in financial counseling. Not glamorous finance, just real-world money management for people living paycheck to paycheck. Studying after midnight felt like chewing glass some nights. My eyes burned. But then Liam would wake up thirsty, padding into the kitchen with his hair sticking up, and I'd remember why I couldn't stop. I wasn't trying to prove my mother wrong. I was trying to make sure my son never asked, "Are we the kind of people who don't belong?" Months turned into years. Liam grew. His questions changed. He stopped asking about the Carters. He stopped waiting for my phone to ring. He made friends, joined soccer, learned to laugh without looking over his shoulder, and I learned something else. When you stop chasing the approval of people who enjoy withholding it, you get space back in your chest. Space where panic used to live. Space where you can plan instead of just survive. The first holidays were strange. On Thanksgiving, I stared at the empty spot where an invitation should have been and waited for grief to hit like a wave. Instead, I made a smaller meal and let Liam choose dessert. On Christmas, we built our own rituals. Hot cocoa, a cheap string of lights in the window, a movie marathon that ended with us asleep on the couch. Liam asked once, very carefully, if Grandma would be mad we weren't there. I told him, "Grandma can be mad. We are still safe." He tested that sentence the way kids test a new word, repeating it at random times, letting it settle into his bones. Slowly, the fear that lived behind his ribs loosened. He stopped flinching when my phone rang. He stopped scanning rooms for approval. And I stopped holding my breath like love might be taken back. That freedom became the foundation for everything I built next, brick by brick. By the time Liam turned 10, I'd finished my certification. I started taking small clients on weekends, single parents, elderly neighbors, a man at the laundromat who whispered that he was drowning in credit card debt. I didn't advertise. I just helped. Word traveled, quiet and fast. I began to see patterns. People weren't bad with money. They were unsupported. They'd been shamed instead of taught. So I built simple systems, budget templates, debt payoff schedules, scripts for calling creditors. I taught people to look at their bank statements without flinching. The first time a woman hugged me and said, "I can sleep again," I went home and cried in the bathroom so Liam wouldn't see. Not because I was sad, because I finally felt useful in a way my mother could never redefine. Then a local newsletter ran a small piece. Hannah Hale helps families avoid foreclosure. A tiny photo. My company name at the bottom. Hale Financial Guidance. I didn't share it. I didn't tag anyone. But the Carters saw everything. 2 nights later, an unknown number called and left a voicemail. Judith's voice, bright and rehearsed. "Hannah, sweetheart, call me. We need to talk. I've been so proud of you." Need. Proud. Words she'd never spent on me when they were free. I deleted the voicemail, but my hand shook afterward, because I knew what was coming. People like my mother don't return because they miss you. They return because your success makes them look better. Silence has a rhythm. At first it's loud, every holiday feels like an empty chair yelling your name. Then it becomes normal, like the hum of a fan you stop noticing. For 6 years, I lived inside that quiet and built something steady in it. By the time Liam was 13, he was taller than my shoulder and opinionated in the way only safe kids become. He didn't remember the church as a holy place anymore. He remembered it as the room where adults smiled while my mother made us disappear. Hale Financial Guidance started as me at a kitchen table with 2 clients and a cheap printer. It grew because people in our town were quietly drowning. A contractor whose hours got cut, a widow trying to keep her house, a couple whose medical bills were eating their retirement. They came to me because I didn't judge them. I didn't tell them they were low. I told them what to do next. "Hope isn't a strategy," became my line, and people repeated it like scripture. Some nights, building that office felt like balancing on a wire. One client would cancel and my budget would tighten. A surprise school fee would land in Liam's backpack like a bill with glitter on it. I kept a panic fund envelope in the drawer, not because it was big, but because it reminded me I had options now. When exhaustion hit, I'd remember my mother's face at the microphone, so calm, so sure, and I'd choose motion over mourning. I also kept a rule. I never spoke about the Carters at home unless Liam brought them up. I didn't want anger to become our wallpaper. We talked about homework, friends, goals. Liam learned to introduce himself without flinching. Hannah Hale would be in the paper someday, I told myself, and the Carter name would not be the price of it. I knew the past watched us from across town. I rented a small office, hired Claire as my receptionist, and took on enough work that my calendar finally looked like a future. Liam spent summers there filing forms and learning that stability is built, not gifted. Then a local reporter asked to interview me about financial literacy. I almost said no, but I pictured the families I'd helped and said yes. The segment aired on a Tuesday night. Liam watched from the couch, and when the anchor said founder and CEO Hannah Hale, he smirked and said, "That's my mom." The next morning, Claire knocked on my door with an expression that didn't match her usual calm. "There's someone here," she said carefully. "A woman named Judith Carter." My stomach didn't drop. It tightened, like my body recognized an old predator. "She says you're her daughter," Claire added. I walked to the glass wall and looked into reception. Judith stood at the desk, hands clasped, posture perfect. Her hair was still curled neatly, but her face looked thinner, less sure. When her eyes met mine, the confident mask flickered. She went a shade paler. "Tell her I don't have a mother named Judith Carter," I said. Claire hesitated. "She says it's urgent." Urgent. The word my family used when they wanted something. I stared at Judith and felt distance, not rage. 6 years had turned her into a lesson more than a person. "Bring her in," I said. Judith's heels clicked down the hallway. She entered my office and froze when she saw the nameplate on my desk. "Hannah Hale, founder and CEO." Her lips parted. "Hannah." I leaned back. "Can I help you?" "I'm your mother," she said softly, as if gentleness could make it true again. I tilted my head. "Judith Carter?" The woman who stood in church and announced she didn't recognize decisions attached to the Carter name? She flinched. I was upset. "Church has cameras," I said, "and memory." Her jaw tightened. "People take things out of context." I almost laughed. Out of context. As if rejection could be misunderstood. Judith leaned forward, voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. "Your father is in trouble." I stayed silent. "Our family is struggling," she continued. "Noah's construction company is on the edge. Emily is facing a lawsuit. We might lose the house." There it was. Not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong." Trouble, struggling, lose. Words meant to pull me back into the old role. Fix it, absorb it, be quiet so everyone else stays comfortable. Judith reached for my desk like she could bridge years with a hand. "We can help each other. You're doing well. You could loan us." "Stop," I said, calm enough that it startled even me. She blinked. "You don't get to erase me in public and then show up when you need money," I said. "That's not family. That's a transaction." "But we're blood," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "That day you decided blood had conditions." The room went silent, thick. Then the door behind her knocked. Liam's voice came in, confident. "Mom, I need your signature for—" He stepped inside and stopped. He was wearing a staff badge from his internship. He looked from Judith to me, and something in his eyes hardened. Judith stood quickly, almost desperate. "Liam," she said, eyes shining. "It's Grandma." Liam didn't move toward her. He looked at me first, as if asking permission to define himself. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Liam turned back to Judith and said, polite as a stranger, "I'm Liam Hale." Judith's shoulders sank as if she'd finally felt the weight of what she'd done. "You would really let your family fall apart?" she whispered. I stood and opened my office door. "My family is standing very strong," I said. I looked past her to Claire. "Please escort Miss Carter out." Judith rose, panic flashing. Hannah, don't do this. I met her eyes. You already did. She left, heels clicking faster now, the sound of retreat. When the door closed, Liam exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. He looked up at me. If they apologize, would it change anything? I shook my head. An apology isn't an ATM card, I said. Liam nodded, then surprised me with a small smile. I don't feel small anymore, he said, and I knew the real victory wasn't my office or my title. It was my son's spine. But I also knew something else. People who believe they own you don't accept no once. They regroup, they return, and next time, they wouldn't come alone. Judith's first visit didn't end the story. It started the chapter where my family pretended they were victims of my boundaries. 2 days after Claire escorted her out, an email hit my inbox from a church elder. Subject, a concerned conversation. I didn't open it. I deleted it, because I refused to sit in another room where people used God to pressure a woman into silence. By Friday, the gossip had reached my clients. A woman across my desk said carefully, I ran into your mother at the market. She said she's worried about you. She said you've become bitter. That was their favorite word for self-respect. I'm focused, I said. Not bitter. That weekend, Noah called from a new number. His voice was warm like we'd spoken yesterday. Mom shouldn't have said that stuff in church, he said. You know how she gets. She didn't get dramatic, I replied. She got clear. He sighed. Look, we're in a bad spot. We need a bridge loan. You'll get it back. With interest. There it was again. The way they approached me like a bank, not a person. I'm not lending money, I said. His tone sharpened. So, you're going to let Dad lose the house? I kept my voice even. Dad watched Mom erase me and stayed quiet. That was his choice. Noah spit out. You've changed. Yes, I said. That was the point. Then I blocked the number. On Monday morning, Claire hurried into my office. They're here, she whispered. All of them. I walked to the glass wall and looked into the lobby. Judith sat rigidly in a chair, like she was waiting to be served. Richard stood beside her, eyes down. Emily scrolled on her phone with the calm of someone who believed she could win any argument. Noah paced. And my youngest sister, Grace, hovered near the door like she wanted to be invisible. They hadn't made an appointment. They hadn't called. They had simply arrived, assuming my time was theirs. And they weren't in my office yet. They were in the waiting area. Alongside my clients, Claire leaned toward them, professional and polite. Good morning. Are you here for a scheduled consultation? Judith's smile twitched. We're family. Claire didn't flinch. Do you have an appointment? For a moment, Judith looked like she might explode. Then she forced a pleasant laugh, because my mother never wanted to look angry in public. We'll wait, she said, teeth tight. So they sat. My family, who once used a church microphone to erase me, now forced to wait under a sign that read, Please check in. Wait to be called. I didn't rush out. I kept working. I met with a couple trying to save their home. I reviewed a debt plan with a teacher. I answered questions. Every so often, I looked through the glass and saw Judith's posture stiffen as she realized she wasn't the priority in my life anymore. After an hour, Claire knocked. They're asking for you. Tell them I'll see them when I'm available, I said. When my schedule finally cleared, I stepped into the lobby. The air tightened. My client sensed the tension and went quiet. Judith stood immediately. Emily did too. Hannah, Judith began, voice trembling with false softness. Thank you for seeing us. I glanced at the sign-in clipboard. You didn't make an appointment. Emily's eyes flashed. We didn't think we needed one. I smiled politely. Everyone needs one. Judith tried to regain control. We're here to talk privately. No, I said. You're here to ask for money, and you chose to do it here because you thought I couldn't say no. Noah stepped forward. You're humiliating, Mom. She humiliated me in church, I replied, in front of my child. Richard finally spoke, voice thin. Hannah, please, We're desperate. Desperation doesn't rewrite history. Judith reached into her purse and slid a folder toward me. Just look. We can't lose the house. I didn't take it. I looked at her hands instead, manicured, trembling. Do you remember what Liam asked me after church? I said. Judith blinked. He asked if we had a different last name. I continued. Because you made him feel like he didn't belong. Grace flinched. Emily looked away. Noah's jaw clenched. Judith's voice cracked. I never meant to hurt him. You never meant to see him, I said. Silence spread through the lobby. I won't lend you money, I said clearly. If you have a legal matter, contact my attorney. If you want forgiveness, start with an apology that doesn't ask for anything. Judith's eyes filled. You're really doing this? I nodded once. You did it first. Then I gestured to the door. Claire will walk you out. As they filed out, Noah muttered, You'll regret this. Emily's eyes promised lawyers. Richard said nothing. Grace lingered and whispered, I'm sorry. So quietly it barely existed. Judith was last. She turned back once, lips trembling. The church will think you're heartless. I met her gaze, steady. Let them, I said. My son thinks I'm safe. Her face drained of color, because she finally understood what she'd lost. Not my money, my obedience. The door closed behind them. The punishment came fast and in the language my mother loved, concern. Within 48 hours, a church friend left a voicemail about honoring your parents. A local women's group removed my name from a volunteer list. Someone reported my business to a licensing board for improper advice, even though each file in my office was documented and compliant. Claire showed me the complaint form and said, This is retaliation, like it was a fact, not a family secret. I told her, Keep everything, and she created a folder on the drive titled Carter. That night, Liam found me scanning paperwork at the kitchen table, tense. Are they trying to mess with us? He asked. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect him from the ugliness of adults. Instead, I chose honesty. They're trying, I said, but they can't take what we built. Liam nodded, then said something that made my stomach twist. What if they tell the whole town you're the bad guy? I looked at my son and realized silence wasn't protecting us anymore. It was leaving room for them to rewrite the story again, and I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt certainty, because people who can't control you don't simply accept no. They look for a way to punish you for it. After my family stood in my waiting room, the town split the way small towns always do, quietly, politely, and viciously. Some people stopped greeting me at the coffee shop. A church friend left a voicemail that began with, As Christians, we have to forgive, and ended with, Your poor mother. Nobody mentioned my son. Then a clip started circulating. Not mine, the church's. Someone screen recorded the anniversary service and posted the section where Judith spoke her pauses, her pointed wording, her eyes drifting toward the back. The caption read, When family values become public shame. At first, I felt sick. I didn't want my worst day turned into content. But I read the comments, and something shifted. People weren't praising Judith. They were asking questions she couldn't control. Did she mean her own daughter? Imagine being that kid. Why do this in a church? Judith tried to repair it the only way she knew, by rewriting the narrative. She posted a long message in a church group about a misunderstood mother's heartbreak and a daughter led astray by bitterness. She wrote about supporting Hannah as a single mother, about always opening her home. No mention of the microphone. No mention of the line she drew in front of God and neighbors. But lies don't hold when a video exists. Retaliation followed. A networking group paused my workshop. An anonymous complaint landed with a regulator. A landlord called about concerns. It was the same old punishment, just dressed in grown-up paperwork. That night, Liam found me at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop. Do we have to be quiet? He asked. The question felt like a door opening. Silence had protected us for years. Now it was giving them space to rewrite the story again. So I made a folder called Receipts. Inside, I saved the church video and transcript. I saved Judith's "I've been so proud" voicemail. I saved Noah's loan request. I saved the elder's email. Not to be petty, to be clear. The next morning, my attorney helped me draft one statement short, factual, impossible to twist. I posted it on my business page with the video attached. 6 years ago, I was publicly disowned at my parents' anniversary service. Since then, I changed my name and built my business independently. Recently, those same relatives requested financial assistance. I declined. Any further interference will be handled legally. Then I hit post. My hands shook afterward, not because I feared the truth, but because I'd been trained to protect people who didn't protect me. Within hours, messages poured in. Some were cruel. "Honor thy mother. This should be private." But more were different. "I'm sorry. Thank you for saying it. My family did something similar. My workshop was reinstated. Clients confirmed appointments." One woman emailed, "Your boundaries make me feel brave." The part Judith didn't expect was how quickly people recognized the pattern. A retired deacon messaged me privately. "I was in that room. I should have spoken up." A woman I barely knew wrote, "Your son looked terrified. I'm sorry we let that happen." Even the pastor called and said, careful and shaken, that the church did not condone public shaming from the pulpit. He didn't apologize for allowing it, but his discomfort was its own proof. Meanwhile, my siblings went silent again. Emily deleted her posts. Noah stopped calling. Richard avoided the grocery store for weeks. They could survive financial trouble, but they couldn't survive being seen clearly. And I realized that visibility was the only thing my mother had ever feared, people seeing the truth without her editing it. For once, the story wasn't being whispered about me. It was being told with me. That shift didn't heal the past completely, but it protected our present. Judith called from a new number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail anyway, voice sharp, mask slipping. "You've ruined us," she hissed. "People are looking at me." I deleted it. On Friday, Judith came back to my office alone. Claire peeked in. "She made an appointment this time," she said, almost amused. I checked the schedule. Judith Carter, consultation, 30 minutes. When the time came, I stepped into the lobby. Judith stood, eyes red, face hollowed by consequences. For the first time, she looked less like authority and more like a person who'd discovered gravity. "Hannah," she began, shaking, "I didn't think it would go like this." "I know," I said. "You thought it would go like it always did." She swallowed. "We're losing the house. Richard's health. Noah's business. Emily's lawsuit. Please." Please. The closest she'd come to humility. I looked past her at the waiting area, where a young couple sat with forms in their laps, scared, honest, showing up the right way. Then I looked back at Judith. "You told me I wasn't your daughter," I said quietly. "You made my son question his name. You don't get to use my stability as your rescue boat." Judith's shoulders collapsed. "So, you'll let us drown?" I took a slow breath. "I'll let you face the consequences of what you chose," I said. Just like I did. At that moment, Liam walked into the lobby with a file in his hands. 13 and steady, he paused when he saw Judith. Judith's eyes flashed with desperate hope. "Liam." He didn't move toward her. He looked at me and asked, "Is this about money again?" I nodded once. Liam turned to Judith and said, clear and calm, "We're not small, and we're not for sale." Judith flinched like the words had weight. I opened my office door and gestured to the exit. "Claire will walk you out," I said. Judith stood slowly. She searched my face for the obedient daughter she used to control. She didn't find her. She left. When the door clicked shut, the building stayed quiet, safe, quiet, earned quiet. Liam exhaled beside me. "Did we do the right thing?" he asked. "We did the protective thing," I said. "Sometimes that's the right thing." He nodded, then smiled, small and certain. "I don't feel little anymore. 6 years ago, My mother erased me in church. 6 years later, she stood in line outside my office like any other stranger asking for help. This time, I wasn't erased. I simply didn't open the door. Did I go too far or not far enough? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, follow and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.